Everyone, are the Brooklyn Nets back? Are they officially back to being in contention? I mean, they've won like 6 out of the last 7 games. Their one loss coming to the Boston Celtics, and they've been just a complete turnaround team in so many ways, right? Their offensive production is smoother. Their defense has been a lot better. Jacques Vaughn, it really has these guys kind of playing good basketball again. They're sharing the ball more. They're moving the ball more. They're playing basketball the right way, as opposed to before with Steve Nash. It was a lot of isolation. Nobody was really buying in. And, Steve Nash just kind of seemed to have lost this team. And now, since Steve Nash is gone, this team seems like a rejuvenated team. I mean, even Ben Simmons has played better. He didn't have a great game last night, but they still won, and he only took like 3 or 4 shots. But he was still had like a solid stat line. And outside of the game, last night, he missed several games, but before that absence, Ben Simmons really was having some nice games and really looked like he was coming out of his shell and kind of getting back to being old Ben Simmons. And if he can do that, this team can be a very scary team, right? Like, that's the whole thing. Like, Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid were considered contenders year in and year out. What is Ben Simmons and Kevin Durant, right? Most people would say, hey, that's a contender. Well, you're adding Kyrie Irving, and it's like, okay, maybe this team really is a contender. And they just look a lot better. They don't look like the team of old. But I still have a lot of concerns with the Brooklyn Nets. But on a bright side, before we dive into like my concerns, is Kyrie Irving. He's been great since he's came back. He had kind of like he had that like game or two where he was a little like looked like a guy that just sat out for 2 weeks or whatever. He had to get back in, but immediately after that, he had like a 35-point game, something like that. And he's been really good. Even last night, he had like 33 points, and he's been a lot better. He's been a real scoring threat. He's had a couple, moments here and there. He had a game where he shot like 7 of 21, and put up like 18 points. So it hasn't been perfect, but he's kind of bought in more. He's basically trying to show like, hey, look, like I can buy in. I can be a team player. He's trying to keep his image high. He's trying to look good, especially after all the drama and the chaos. Now, I still think the Brooklyn Nets are a bad day away from just completely imploding again, and I don't know if they'll be able to recover the next time. So far, they've been able to kind of stop the leak. They put the Flex Seal over the leak, and so far it's held up pretty nicely. And they're looking good. Like they're winning basketball games. And they've gotten and climbed back into the top of the standings, and they look like a team that is heading in the right direction. They look like a team that could really make some noise, could really be a legit threat, and Kyrie is trying to buy it. Now, I still believe this is it. I still believe that the Brooklyn Nets, as currently constructed, this is their last year. I still think Kyrie Irving leaves after this year. I still think Kevin Durant very likely demands a trade again in the offseason. And then whatever happens with Ben Simmons happens with Ben Simmons, whether they build around him or they try to trade him and get some value for him. But I still really think, unless this team, makes it to the NBA Finals or wins the Finals, or like maybe even they, lose in let's say a tough 7 against like the Bucks or something, right? In like the Eastern Finals, right? Then I could see them saying, all right, well, maybe we run it back one more time. And then Kyrie Irving kind of maybe, opts in for a year or something like that. And they sign him to like a 1-year deal, like a prove it deal or something. Maybe they do something like that. But I think realistically, this is probably it, unless there's just some like crazy turn of events. And I think Kyrie, I think he's working hard right now to kind of like, shine a positive light on his image. And, obviously he lost the Nike deal and all that stuff. So Kyrie's trying to kind of get back to being Kyrie Irving. But out of all the games that they've won, they're beating like the bad to middle of the pack teams. And they play the Celtics and they get smacked, right? I still don't think Brooklyn is there. Personally, I think Brooklyn is good. They're a really good team, right? On paper, they look like one of, if not the best teams on paper. I mean, you look at the roster and you're like, man, like they have a lot of talent on that roster. Problem is I still think the Bucks and the Celtics are just night and day better than the Brooklyn Nets. And I still don't think the Brooklyn Nets are going to be able to overcome those two teams unless you just see some like insane heroics by Kevin Durant. If Kevin Durant's averaging like 40 a game, then maybe they have a real shot. But I think the Celtics are going to likely do what they did last year, and that is hone in on Kevin Durant and say, we're going to stop Kevin Durant, and everybody else is going to have to beat us. And that's what they did. It wasn't that Kevin Durant had a bad series. It was just they only cared about Kevin Durant. They literally did not care about nobody else besides Kevin Durant. They said, let's stop Kevin Durant. If we stop Kevin Durant, then everybody else is going to flounder and they're going to fall apart and we're going to win the series. And that's exactly what happened, right? So much so it led to a sweep. And now I don't necessarily think Brooklyn will get swept again, especially if you get, a Philly Ben Simmons or even a 25% of that. I think this is a team that, like, I wouldn't be shocked if they beat, Boston or Milwaukee, but I think realistically, I just think that there is a gap. I think there is Boston and Milwaukee and then everyone else in the Eastern Conference, right? And I mean, you can even make an argument the Western Conference, right? I just think those are the two best teams right now. I think that they are proving game in and game out, night in and night out, that they're on a crash course for whoever wins that series, and likely the Eastern Conference Finals is going to the NBA Finals, likely wins the NBA Finals. And so I think Brooklyn, I think they need some pieces. The problem is they don't have any way to get a piece, right? Like they're kind of in the same boat like the Lakers are. Like they need like a solid 3-and-D wing and probably like a legit big, and they're off to the races and they'd probably be a contender, right? Like if there was some way, and I'm just throwing this name out there, I don't think they'd ever be able to get the guy, but if for whatever reason they were able to get like a Jeremy Grant, I think that would be beautiful. I think that'd be perfect. Because then you'd have like Ben Simmons and Jeremy Grant on the wings. And then if they could get like a Miles Turner or something, right? I think then that is probably the best team in the league. But I think currently constructed, I think they are really good. I think they are probably, the third or fourth best team in the East. But I just think that gap between Brooklyn and Milwaukee and Boston is just too far. And unless you have some insane heroics by Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant, I just don't think they're going to get it done. And if they lose in the second round again to, Boston or Milwaukee, I think that's it. I think Kevin Durant's going to want out because I think he's going to say, look, we have no salary cap. We have no way and no assets, no way to improve the team and make the team better. I'm only getting older and I want to win, right? Like, I mean, that's why Kevin Durant originally said he wanted to be traded, because he didn't believe that he could win with the Brooklyn Nets. And I think that if he has another first or second round exit with the Brooklyn Nets, that's it. I think he's gone. I think he leaves because the Brooklyn Nets have no way to get better unless you trade Kyrie Irving to go get, a couple pieces. Maybe you go like the Lakers with Russell Westbrook route, for a long time, Russ being traded for like 3 or 4 players. You could kind of do the same thing with Kyrie Irving. Take Kyrie, maybe trade him for PJ Washington and Terry Rozier or something. And it's like, now you got like 2 20-point-a-game guys. Maybe that helps. But I think in reality, I think this is a really solid team. I think this is a team that could make a lot of noise. I think this is a team that, maybe could surprise or shock a team or two. I think this team could beat, Atlanta, Philly, like all those middle of the pack teams, right? Like I think that they can beat all those teams. I mean, they're beating all the bad teams that they're supposed to beat. They're beating all the middle of the pack teams, which they're supposed to beat. But they can't beat the good teams in the East or the West, really, right? Like they're good, but they're not good enough, and I don't see this team just magically turning the corner. I think we are seeing the best that this team can play, and it's good, but it's not great. I think Ben Simmons, unless he becomes a 15, 11, and 11 guy, I don't see this team like reaching a higher ceiling. I think this team is at their ceiling. I think Kevin Durant's doing everything he can to be, as competitive or keep the Brooklyn Nets as competitive as they can. I think Kyrie's starting to, come into his own, and he's been nice and he's been solid. Some of the role guys have stepped up and stuff. But I just think this team lacks real defense, real wings. I think, they're holding their own defensively, in the regular season. Again, mostly against bad teams. And I just think that they're going to, once they get to the playoffs, you're going to see, okay, this team isn't that good defensively, and they're really not that good offensively, right? Especially if you just basically hone in on Kevin Durant and keep Kevin Durant, pedestrian. If you keep Kevin Durant to like 20 to 25 points a game, you're probably beating this team, right? It's when Kevin Durant gets to like 30, 33 points, stuff like that, 27, 28, 29, like those games. But when you keep Kevin Durant to like, 22, 23 points, it's hard for this team to generate W's. And I just think that you're going to have Milwaukee, you're going to have Boston. They're going to do what they have to keep that. Milwaukee's probably throwing Giannis on Kevin Durant and saying, you have to beat Giannis. And then Giannis is just going to do everything he can to guard Kevin Durant. I think they throw Jrue Holiday on Kyrie Irving and, Chris Middleton on probably Ben Simmons. And Chris Middleton can also help on Kevin Durant and run some traps with Giannis and Middleton. And you basically just stop Kyrie and put Jrue Holiday on him and make things difficult for him. And then you just basically have all your other guys just kind of, hey, just make sure they don't get wide open threes. Right? I mean, that's basically what Boston did. Boston was like, hey, we're going to throw everybody at Kevin Durant. We're going to let Kyrie get 30 points a game, and nobody else is going to step up in the big moment, and they're all going to lose, and then we're going to win the series. And that's exactly what happened. It's exactly what happened. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion, so I pass the question on to you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments section below. What do you think? You think Brooklyn, you think that they're a legit team? Do you think they can make some noise? Do you think they can come out of the Eastern Conference? Or do you think, they're DOA, like, as soon as they play, Milwaukee or Boston, that's it. It's over. They're done. However you feel, whatever your thoughts are, good, bad, ugly, somewhere in between, I'd love to hear them. Let me know down in the comment section below.